Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Storytime with Uncle Monkey. I'm your host, Uncle Monkey. I'm so glad you came to join me today. Our story today is called The Danced Out Shoes. There once was a king who had 12 daughters, each one more beautiful than the next. They used to sleep together in one large room where their beds were side by side. In the evening, when they were in bed, the king would lock the door and bolt it tight. But when he opened the door in the morning, he saw that their shoes were worn out with dancing, and no one was able to discover how that had happened. Then the king issued a proclamation. Whoever could learn where they danced at night was to choose one of them for his wife and become king after he died. But anyone who applied for the task and couldn't find out within the space of 3 days and nights was to forfeit his life. Before long, a prince applied and offered to undertake that risky task. He was warmly welcomed, and in the evening was led to a room that adjoined the princess's bedroom. A bed was prepared for him there, and he was to pay attention to where they went to dance, so that they couldn't do anything secretly or go out some other way. The door to their room was left unlocked as well. But the prince's eyelids became as heavy as lead, and he fell asleep. When he awoke in the morning, there were holes in the bottoms of their shoes because all 12 princesses had been dancing. On the second and third evenings, things were just the same. So his head was cut off without mercy. Afterwards, many more men came and applied for the perilous adventure, but all of them lost their lives. It now came about that a poor soldier who had been wounded and was no longer fit for duty was on the road to town where the king lived. Then he met an old woman who asked him where he was headed. "I myself don't rightly know," he said, and added jokingly, "I wouldn't mind finding out where the princesses wear out their shoes dancing so I could become king later on." "That's not so difficult," said the old woman. "You must avoid drinking the wine that's brought to you in the evening, and you must pretend to be fast asleep." Then she gave him a short cape, saying, "Whenever you throw this over your shoulders, you will become invisible, and then you can sneak after the 12 girls." When the soldier received that good advice, he became serious about the matter. He plucked up his courage, appeared before the king, and declared himself a suitor. He was welcomed as hospitably as the rest, and he was dressed in royal garb. In the evening at bedtime, he was taken to that anteroom, and when he was about to go to bed, the eldest princess came, bringing him a goblet of wine. But he had tied a sponge under his chin, and he let the wine flow into it while he didn't drink a drop. Then he lay down, and after lying there for a while, began to snore as if fast asleep. The 12 princesses heard it and laughed, and the eldest said, "This one, too, could have been more careful with his life." Then they got up, opened wardrobes, trunks, and chests, and took splendid gowns out of them. They adorned themselves in front of the mirrors and skipped about, looking forward to the dance. Only the youngest one said, "I don't know, you're looking forward to it, but I have such an odd feeling. I'm sure we're in for some misfortune." "You're a silly goose," her eldest sister said, "and you're always afraid. Have you forgotten how many princes have already been here for nothing? As for the soldier, I didn't even need to give him a sleeping potion. That roughneck wouldn't have woken up anyway." When all of them were ready, they first took a look at the soldier, but he had his eyes closed and didn't stir or budge, and they now believed they had nothing to worry about. Then the eldest princess went to her bed and knocked on it. Immediately it sank through the floor, and they walked down through the opening, one after the other, the eldest in front. The soldier, who had observed all of this, didn't hesitate long, but put on his cape and followed them down. Halfway down the stairs, he stepped on the youngest sister's gown for an instant. She became alarmed and cried out, "What's this? Who's tugging me by my dress?" "Don't be such a simpleton," said her eldest sister. "You got caught on a hook." When they reached the bottom of the stairs, and down there, they were on a stupendous avenue of trees where all the leaves were of silver, glittering and shining. The soldier said to himself, "You ought to take along a piece of evidence." And he broke off a twig. Then a tremendous noise issued from the tree. The youngest princess shouted again, "There's something wrong! Didn't you hear that crack?" But her eldest sister said, "Those are the volleys of rejoicing because we'll soon be released or have released our princes from their spell." After that, they came to an avenue of trees where all the leaves were of gold, and finally to a third where they were diamonds of the purest water. He broke off a twig in each avenue, creating an awful noise each time, so that the youngest princess started in fear. But the eldest princess insisted that they were volleys of rejoicing. They went on and reached a broad river where 12 small boats were waiting. In each boat sat a handsome prince. The princes had been expecting the 12 girls. And now each one helped the princess into his boat. The soldier sat down in the youngest princess's boat. Her prince then said, "I don't know why, but this boat is much heavier tonight, and I have to row with all my might if I want to keep it moving." "What could cause that?" said the youngest princess. "Except the warm weather? I feel so warm all over, too." On the other side of the river stood a beautiful, brightly illuminated palace, from which you could hear all joyful band of kettle drums and trumpets. They rowed across and went in, and each prince danced with his sweetheart. The soldier, invisible, joined in the dance, and whenever a princess held a goblet of wine, he drank out of it, till it was empty when she put it to her lips. The youngest princess was frightened by that too, but her eldest sister silenced her every time. And so they danced until 3 o'clock in the morning, by which time all their shoes were worn through, and they had to stop. The princess rowed them back across the river. This time the soldier sat in the first boat with the eldest princess. On the riverbank, the girls took their leave of the princes, promising to return the coming night. When they were at the staircase, the soldier ran ahead of them and returned to his bed. And the 12 girls had made their slow, weary climb with mincing steps. He was already snoring so loud they could all hear it. And they said, "This one is no threat to us." Then they took off their beautiful gowns, put them away, placed the danced-out shoes under their beds, and lay down. The next morning, the soldier didn't say a thing. He wanted to see the unusual events again, and he went along on the second and third nights. Everything occurred like the first time, and each night they danced until their shoes were ruined. But the third time he took along a goblet as evidence. When the time came for him to make his report, he hid the 3 twigs and the goblet in his clothes and appeared before the king, while the 12 girls stood behind the door to listen to what he'd say. When the king asked, "Where did my 12 daughters wear out their shoes dancing at night?" he replied, "With 12 princes in an underground palace." He recounted what had occurred and drew forth his evidence. Then the king sent for his daughters and asked them whether the soldier had spoken the truth. Since they saw that they had been exposed and it would do no good to deny the facts, they had to make a full confession. Then the king asked him which one he wanted for his wife. He said, "I'm not a youngster anymore. Give me the oldest one." And so, on that very day, their wedding was celebrated, and he was promised the kingdom after the king's death. But the princes were enchanted again for as many days as the number of nights they had danced with the 12 princesses. The end.